What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I've broken the stories down in the timeline so you could jump around to any story that you want. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button and share this episode with anyone you know who can benefit from this information. We start off with ALPHV, otherwise known as BlackCat ransomware gang. Tracked as UNC4466 was observed exploiting 3 vulnerabilities in the Veritas Backup solution to gain initial access to the target network. The flaws were addressed with the release of version 21.2 back in March 2021, but many public-facing endpoints are yet to be updated. Mondiant researchers identified over 8,500 installations. That's not all the installations, just they were able to identify 8,500. Of Veritas Backup executive instances that are currently exposed to the internet. They don't necessarily need to be exposed to the internet, but these are ones that they found that were exposed to the internet, and some of them are still vulnerable. The exploitation of these flaws can be done using a penetration testing framework like Metasploit, which has a specific module to target these issues, and it's had it since September 2022. UNC4466 then used legitimate Femitex advanced IP scanner and AD Recon utilities as part of an internal reconnaissance. The threat actor then used the background intelligence transfer service to download additional tools like Lasagna, Ligalo, WinSW, Rclone, and finally the ALPHV ransomware encryptor. The group gathered clear text credentials and credential material by using multiple credentials access tools like Mimikatz, Lasagna, and NanoDump. The threat actor evaded detection by clearing event logs and disabling Microsoft Defender's real-time monitoring capability using the built-in setMP preference commandlet. So, obviously, it could be devastating to you if you fall victim to a ransomware attack. So how do you protect yourself? Number one, if the service does not need to have internet connectivity or be reachable over the internet, then don't let it be reachable. Second, make sure you update your software. Google's threat analysis group, TAG, has issued a warning regarding the North Korea-linked ARCHIPELAGO group, which is targeting government and military personnel, think tanks, policymakers, academics, and researchers in South Korea, the US, and elsewhere. The attack chain associated with ARCHIPELAGO begins with phishing emails that contain malicious links. These emails pose as being sent by a representative of a media outlet or a think tank and ask North Korean experts to participate in a media interview or request for information. Upon clicking the link, the recipient is redirected to a phishing page that masquerades as a login prompt. The credentials provided by the recipient are sent to an attacker-controlled URL. The group also uses malware like Baby Shark, hosted on Google Drive in the form of blank files or ISO image files, and malicious Google Chrome extensions to harvest sensitive data. The group has been active since 2012 and is likely a subset of the threat actor tracked by Mondiant as APT43. So, what do? Just try not to fall for phishing emails. Apple recently released emergency security updates to address 2 actively exploited zero-day vulnerabilities, CVE 2023-28205 and CVE 2023-28206, impacting iPhones, Macs, and iPads. Both vulnerabilities were reported by Clément Lassinier. We're hearing a lot from him in the past few weeks, of Google's threat analysis group, and Donche Serbahale of Amnesty International Security Lab. The first vulnerability, CVE 2023-28205, is a use after free issue that resides in the WebKit and can be exploited to lead to arbitrary code execution. The second vulnerability, CVE 2023-28206, is an out-of-bounds write issue that resides in the iOS Surface Accelerator and can be exploited to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges. Apple addressed the zero-day issue with the release of macOS Ventura 13.3.1, iOS 16.4.1, iPadOS 16.4.1, and Safari 16.4.1. In February, the company also released emergency security updates to address an actively exploited zero-day vulnerability tracked as CVE 2023-23529 that impacts iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. It is likely that a hacker group is responsible for the exploitation of these vulnerabilities, but the group has not yet been identified. Victims of the attack may include companies and individuals who use Apple products and or services, as well as companies who provide software that is vulnerable to these flaws. So, the CISA's JCDC is going to focus on the energy sector. Cybercrime is becoming increasingly prevalent, and the U.S. government is responding by forming the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and the Joint Cyber Defense Collective. The JCDC is aiming to develop and launch defense plans focused on risk reduction and updating the National Cyber Incident Response Plan in collaboration with the FBI. They're targeting high-risk sectors such as civil organizations that support journalists, cybersecurity researchers, and public utilities like the Colonial Pipeline, which was attacked. These attacks are expected to continue to increase. So, of course, they're putting this group together, this collective together, to try to focus on those industries or on those sectors to beef up their security and make sure that they put checks and balances in place, make sure maybe that they have failovers or who knows what. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Microsoft recently addressed a zero-day vulnerability tracked to CVE 2023-28252 in the Windows Common Log file system. This vulnerability is an unspecified privilege escalation flaw that could be exploited without user interaction. US CISA added the flaw to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog based on evidence that threat actors are exploiting the flaw to escalate privileges and deploy Nokoyawa ransomware. Kaspersky Lab experts first reported that the CVE 2023-28252 flaw was exploited in attacks deploying the Nokoyawa ransomware. The exploit uses the vulnerability to corrupt another specially crafted base log file object in a way that a fake element of the base log file gets treated as a real one. The exploit was developed by a sophisticated cybercrime group, which has been known to use similar CLFS driver exploits in the past. CISA orders federal agencies fix this vulnerability by May 2nd, 2023. On March 28th, 2023, an Estonian man, Maxim Shevlyakov, was arrested in Estonia for helping the Russian government and military to purchase US-made electronics and hacking tools. Shevlyakov used several Estonian-based business entities, the Estonian shell companies, to buy goods that would have been available to Russian end users such as low-noise pre-scalers and synthesizers, analog to digital converters, and a licensed copy of the penetration testing platform Metasploit Pro. The U.S. government added Shevlyakov to the entity list in 2012, which bans procuring and delivering export-restricted items to Russia. To deliver the purchased goods, Shevlyakov ran an intricate smuggling operation across the Russian border. In total, Shevlyakov exported at least $800,000 worth of items from U.S. electronics manufacturers and distributors between October 2012 and January 2022. Fortinet has addressed a critical vulnerability tracked to CVE 2022-41331 with a CVSS score of 9.3 in its Fortinet FortiPresence data analytics solutions. FortiPresence is a comprehensive data analytics solution designed for analyzing user traffic and deriving usage patterns that has a major vulnerability. Successful exploitation of this vulnerability can lead to remote unauthenticated access to Redis and MongoDB instances via crafted authentication requests. This vulnerability affects FortiPresence 1.2 all versions, FortiPresence 1.1 all versions, and FortiPresence 1.0 all versions. However, cloud instances of FortiPresence are not impacted. Fortinet addressed multiple vulnerabilities in this product as part of its April 2023 vulnerability advisories, and customers are recommended to update their instances as soon as possible. Hikvision, a Chinese video surveillance giant, recently addressed an access control vulnerability tracked as CVE 2023-28808, affecting its hybrid SAN and cluster storage products. An attacker with network access to the device can exploit the issue to obtain admin permission by sending crafted messages to vulnerable devices. The vulnerability was reported in December 2022 by Suvik Kandar and Arko Dar of the Redinant Innovations team in India. Hikvision released version 2.3.8-8 for hybrid SAN and version 1.1.4 for cluster storage devices to address the vulnerability. The vendor is not aware of attacks in the wild exploiting the vulnerability and is urging customers to patch their installations. HP recently identified a critical vulnerability tracked to CVE 2023-1707 that affects many models of HP Enterprise LaserJet and HP LaserJet managed printers. Exploiting the flaw could lead to information disclosure. The vulnerability is present in devices running Future Smart firmware version 5.6 with IPsec enabled. HP has released a temporary firmware mitigation and recommends customers to revert to a prior firmware version, Future Smart version 5.5.0.3. It is not known if any active exploits are present, but the exposure period was limited to mid-February 2023 until end of March 2023. Hyundai has suffered a data breach that impacted Italian and French car owners and customers who booked a test drive. Threat actors had access to the email addresses, physical addresses, telephone numbers, and vehicle chassis numbers of the impacted individuals. The data breach letter sent to the impacted individuals informs them that an unauthorized third party had access to the database of customers, and Hyundai Italy has notified the privacy watchdog and hired external cybersecurity experts to determine the scope of the incident. The breach is the latest in a series of security incidents that have affected Hyundai, including an emergency software update to fix a flaw that can allow stealing a car with a USB cable, a breach of the networks of the car manufacturers BMW and Hyundai by the Vietnam-linked APT Ocean Lotus, otherwise known as APT-32, and security vulnerabilities in the Hyundai Blue Link mobile apps. It's unclear how many individuals were impacted by the breach. The FBI recently seized Genesis Market, a black marketplace for stolen credentials that was launched in 2017. Genesis Market was an invite-only platform, but invite codes were easily available online. It offered access to browser fingerprints that allowed criminals to impersonate victims' web browsers, including IP addresses, operating system data, time zones, device info, system cookies, and more. The platform provided access to accounts of popular services such as Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Gmail, Netflix, PayPal, Spotify, and Zoom. The seizure is part of a law enforcement operation codenamed Operation Cookie Monster. The authorities are searching for information about the administrators of the platform, suggesting that they have yet to identify them. The Microsoft Threat Intelligence Team observed a series of destructive attacks on hybrid environments that were carried out by Muddy Water App Group, aka MERCURY. The group was observed targeting both on-premise and cloud environments, likely exploiting known vulnerabilities in unpatched applications for initial access before handing off access to another actor, Dev 1084, to perform extensive reconnaissance and discovery, establish persistence, and move laterally throughout the network. Dev 1084 was then observed leveraging highly privileged compromised credentials to perform en mass destruction of resources, including server farms, virtual machines, storage accounts, and virtual networks, and then send emails to internal and external recipients. The link between the Dev 1084 cluster and MERCURY, or Muddy Water, was established based on the evidence of the attackers using highly privileged credentials and access to domain controllers and registering a scheduled task using GPO. Microsoft provides mitigations for destructive attacks to secure on-prem environment and Azure Active Directory environments. Cobalt Strike is a paid penetration testing product developed and maintained by Fortran. It can be used by threat actors, including ransomware groups and nation-state actors, to gain initial access to a target network and conduct malicious activities such as escalating privileges, lateral movements, and deploying additional malicious payloads. Microsoft Digital Crimes Unit, the DCU, collaborated with Fortran and Health Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or Health ISAC, to curb the abuse of Cobalt Strike by cybercriminals by securing a court order in the U.S. to remove cracked versions of Cobalt Strike. Microsoft observed more than 68 ransomware attacks involving the use of cracked copies of Cobalt Strike against healthcare organizations in more than 19 countries around the world. Microsoft also observed nation-state actors, including app groups from Russia, China, Vietnam, and Iran, using cracked copies of Cobalt Strike. Microsoft, Fortran, and Health ISAC are collaborating with the FBI Cyber Division, National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, and Europol's European Cybercrime Center on the case. This week, or last week, the ransomware gang Money Message announced to have hacked the Taiwanese multinational IT corporation MSI, or MicroStar International. MSI designs, manufactures, and sells motherboards and graphics cards for customers in the United States, Canada, and internationally. The ransomware group added the company to the list of victims on its Tor leak site and claims to have stolen the source code from the company, including a framework to develop BIOS and private keys. They then published a series of screenshots of the company's CTMS and ERP databases. The Money Message group threatened to publish the stolen files by Wednesday, April 12th, 2023, if the company did not pay the ransom. MSI has since confirmed the security breach and reported the incident to the government, law enforcement agencies, and cybersecurity units. The company is now enhancing their information. After this, they are enhancing their information security control measures of its network and infrastructure and urging users to obtain firmware BIOS updates only from its official website. The ransomware gang has demanded a ransom payment of $4 million. Late 2022, researcher Sam Sabitan discovered a series of critical vulnerabilities in several smart devices manufactured by Nexx, including smart garage door openers. Now, we've heard the story before, but we're going to read it again anyway. Smart door openers, alarms, and plugs. Plugs? A remote attacker can exploit these vulnerabilities to open and close garage doors, take control of alarms, and switch smart plugs on and off for any customer. The researcher attempted to report the flaws to Nexx, but the company has never replied to the reports. The researcher reported the issues to the United States Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security Agency, which assigned 5 CVEs and estimated that over 40,000 devices located in both residential and commercial properties are affected by the issues. Additionally, more than 20,000 individuals have active Nexx accounts. To mitigate the risk of exploitation, it's recommended to disable internet connectivity for vulnerable Nexx devices or protect them with a firewall. The Cyber News researcher team discovered a misconfiguration in the OCR Labs system that exposed sensitive data. OCR Labs is a leading provider of digital ID verification tools, with its ID Kit tool being used by major banks, telecom companies, and governmental agencies. The discovered data leak impacted financial institutions in Australia and the UK, including QBank, Defence Bank, MA Money, Ma Money, Bloom Money, Admiral Money, and Reed. The leak exposed database credentials, Amazon Web Services with simple queue services, access credentials, application tokens, and various application programming interface or API keys, including Google and Liveness API keys, Engine 4 credentials, and an API key for Experian. The exposure of these keys is particularly dangerous because it potentially allows an attacker to see all the API's data and modify and update related files, pipelines, and workflows. Leaked app URLs, IDs, and tokens could have been used by threat actors to hijack OCR Labs client applications. OpenAI, if you don't know who it is, and I don't know where you're living, but a leading artificial intelligence research company has launched a bug bounty program offering up to $20,000 to bug hunters that will report vulnerabilities in its ChatGPT chatbot service. I think $20,000. I mean, considering how much this company is worth, $20,000, like up to $20,000, should be up to like $10 million as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, the company has also outlined a policy based on disclose.io, which outlines the definition of good faith regarding the discovery and reporting of vulnerabilities. The bug bounty program covers APIs, API keys, and other assets belonging to OpenAI, as well as confidential OpenAI corporate information that may be exposed through third parties. In March 2023, OpenAI addressed multiple severe vulnerabilities in ChatGPT that could have allowed attackers to take over user accounts and view chat histories, including a web cache deception vulnerability reported by the bug bounty hunter and Shockwave founder Gal Nagley. This bug bounty program is an important step forward in helping to protect OpenAI users and customers from potential malicious actors. Citizen Lab researchers have reported that at least 5 civil society members were victims of spyware and exploits developed by the Israeli surveillance firm QuaDream. The victims include journalists, political opposition figures, and an NGO worker located in North America, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Wait a second, an NGO worker located in all those areas? Whatever. The researchers also believe that the threat actors used a suspected iOS 14 zero-click exploit to deploy QuaDream's spyware. The zero-day exploit, dubbed End of Days, appears to work against iOS versions 14.4 and 14.4.2 and possibly other versions. End of Days relies on invisible iCloud calendar invitations sent from the spyware's operator to victims. QuaDream Limited is an Israeli company that specializes in the development and sale of advanced digital offensive technology to government clients. The company is known for its spyware marketed under the name RAIN, which, like NSO Group's Pegasus spyware, reportedly uses zero-click exploits to hack into targeted devices. Microsoft threat intelligence analysts assess with high confidence that a threat group tracked by Microsoft as Dev0196 is linked to an Israel-based private sector offensive actor known as QuaDream. The malware is composed of a monitor agent, which is a native Mach-O file written Objective-C, and the main agent that is also a native Mach-O file and is written in Go language. The monitor agent is designed to reduce the forensic footprint of the malicious code to avoid detection, while the main agent supports sophisticated spying capabilities. The developers behind the VM2 JavaScript sandbox module have addressed a critical vulnerability tracked to CVE 2023-29017 with a CVSS score of 9.8 that could be exploited to execute arbitrary shellcode. VM2 is a sandbox that can run untrusted code in an isolated context on Node.js servers and is part of 722 packages with approximately 4 million weekly downloads. The vulnerability was reported by the security researcher Seong-gil Wee from South Korean security firm KAIST WSP Lab. a threat actor can bypass the sandbox protections to gain remote code execution rights on the host running the sandbox. In October 2022, VM2 maintainers addressed another critical sandbox escape vulnerability, tracked to CVE 2022-36067. Researchers from cybersecurity firm Trellix have detailed the tactics, techniques, and procedures of an emerging cybercriminal gang called Read the Manual RTM Locker. The group provides a ransomware as a service and provides its malicious code to a network of affiliates by imposing strict rules. The group aims to fly below the radar and does not target systems in the CIS region. The affiliates are obliged to remain active or their account will be removed after 10 days without notifying them up front. The group also avoids targeting morgues. Morgues? Really? Well, that's one. We're not going to morgues. Hospitals, which I understand. COVID-19 vaccine-related organizations. I guess I can understand it too. Critical infrastructure, definitely makes sense. Law enforcement, and other prominent companies to attract as little attention as possible. The communication with the RTM gang is to be done only via the TOX messenger. The attack flow sees the malware elevating privileges, shutting down selected processes and services like antivirus products, deleting shadow copies, and finally encrypting the files on the targeted systems. The experts pointed out that this locker is not designed to be distributed via an automated campaign because it only properly works once it's obtained the required administrative privileges. Poland's military counterintelligence service and its computer emergency response team have linked a recent string of cyber attacks targeting NATO and European Union countries to the Russia-linked APT29 group, aka SVR group, Cozy Bear, Nobelium, and the Dukes. APT29, along with APT28, has been involved in the past in Democratic National Committee hack and the wave of attacks aimed at the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. In early March, BlackBerry researchers, BlackBerry, like they're still around, uncovered a new cyber espionage campaign aimed at EU countries. The hackers targeted diplomatic entities and systems transmitting sensitive information about the region's politics, aiding Ukrainian citizens fleeing the country, and providing help to the government of the Ukraine. The attack chain commences with a spear phishing email containing a weaponized document, which contains a link leading to the download of an HTML file. The HTML files are hosted on a legitimate online library website that was likely compromised by the threat actors sometime between the end of January 2023 and the beginning of February 2023. The APT29 group has also abused multiple legitimate systems, including Legusrite and eTrustX, which are used by EU nations for exchanging info and data in a secure way. The threat actors used the Envy Scout dropper to drop downloads such as Snowy Amber and QuaDream, which in turn deliver additional payloads, including Halfrig Tool. SAP released 24 security notes in April 2023, 19 of which are new vulnerabilities. The most critical vulnerabilities are listed in the latest security bulletin. It is strongly recommended that SAP administrators apply the available security patches as soon as possible. I like how they call them notes. That's like, it's just a little note, like a post-it. The vulnerabilities could be exploited by hacker groups through the exact culprit, although the exact culprit is unknown. The victims of the attack could be the companies that have the flaws, were hacked, or provide the software with the flaws. HR and payroll management firm SDWorks recently shut down its IT systems for its UK and Ireland service after a cyber attack. The company employs more than 7,000 HR professionals and serves over 5.2 million employees every month, with a client base of over 82,000 companies. The company has not revealed the type of attack it has suffered or if it has suffered a data breach. However, the company has taken immediate action by isolating all systems and servers to mitigate any further impact. At the time of the writing, the company's portal for UK and Ireland is unreachable. Is reachable again. Excuse me. Sophos recently addressed 3 vulnerabilities in their Sophos web appliance software, including a critical flaw tracked to CVE 2023-1671 with a CVS score of 9.8. This vulnerability is a pre-auth command injection issue that resides in the warn proceed handler and affects appliances older than version 4.3.10.4. Additionally, a high severity code execution issue tracked to CVE 2022-4934 was addressed. This issue is a post-auth command injection vulnerability that resides in the exception wizard and can allow administrators to execute arbitrary code. Lastly, medium severity reflected cross-site scripting vulnerability tracked to CVE 2020-36692 was also addressed. All of these vulnerabilities were discovered and responsibly disclosed by Sophos to Sophos by external security researchers via their bug bounty program. Sophos Web Appliance will reach end of life status on July 20th, 2023, and customers are recommended to replace the appliances with Sophos Firewall. The STYX Marketplace was launched at the beginning of 2023 as a platform specifically designed to facilitate financial crime. It provides cybercriminals with a range of services such as stolen financial data, credit card information, forged documents, money laundering services, and victim reconnaissance lookups. This discovery illustrates the post-pandemic menace of cyber-enabled financial crime and the threat it imposes to financial institutions and their customers. Cybercriminals have been targeting new jurisdictions outside North America and the UK, including United Arab Emirates and multiple countries in the European Union. The EU is where these types of threat actors typically set up merchant terminals and business bank accounts to facilitate money laundering in the form of cash outs and bank drops. Fraud prevention teams often struggle to detect criminal cash outs and drops without prior intelligence about money mule networks. This is why it is vital to promote agile and preemptive cyber financial intelligence exchange between financial institutions and regulatory oversight agencies. The emergence of STYX also highlights the alarming growth of financial fraud-focused services on the dark web, and financial institutions need for enhanced security measures to combat this threat. Security's investigation of STYX also yielded the discovery of 100 mule accounts. On January 13th, 2023, Yum Brands suffered a cyber attack that forced the company to take its systems offline, closing roughly 300 restaurants in the UK for one day. The company, which owns KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell brands, disclosed a data breach and revealed that ransomware actors have stolen personally identifiable information of an unspecified number of individuals. The data breach notification letter sent to potentially impacted individuals states that personal information was exposed, including names, driver license numbers, non-driver identification card numbers, and other types of personal identifiers. Yum Brands pointed out that they have no evidence of identity theft or fraud involving exposed data, yet the company investigated the security breach with the help of third-party security experts to identify the scope of the incident. At this time, Yum Brands has yet to determine the exact number of impacted individuals. So the Yum Brands and those experts, up to now, have not been able to determine the exact number of impacted individuals. The company is also providing complimentary credit monitoring and identity protection services for 2 years via IDX. And that, my friends, is the news. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Don't forget to ride. Farewell.